Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day today. In the spirit of the draft coming up in just a few short days, me and Loker, say hello,
Yo,
have put together a bit of a yap talking about some of the Mons that are likely to get drafted in the first few 4 rounds
Yep.
coming up on this Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah.
For the rapid fire first 4 rounds of the draft.
Yeah.
We're gonna be ranking all the Monarchs since I don't know about all the leagues, but I know our league is 14. I think all the leagues are 14, right? Or
I
both
think
leagues are?
I think the other division is 12.
Okay, well, either way, a large majority, almost every single Monarch's going to be picked. So
Most
we're going
of
to be
them are
talking
gonna
about
be
all the Monarchs, going over, some of their strengths and weaknesses, and then we'll also touch on some other Mons from different pools that could be seen in the first 4 rounds that are either good or maybe bad in a trap. But if you're ready, I'll just jump right into the first slide. We'll talk about the big three of the Monarchs.
Sounds good to me. Take a quick look at the Monarch board real quick.
Yep.
Just to get a good overview of what we're going to be talking about today. Here we are. As a reminder, you get one of these, the most powerful Mons in the format, and typically what most people will build their draft around, but some of these are more flexible and you can
it's
build
important to
around
note that I feel like there's like two archetypes. There's the Monarchs you build your team around, and then there's the Monarchs that are like the great glue that kind of hold your rest of your team together. Because you can build your team around a lower point Mon, but you don't want to grab too many that are kind of functioning in the same way. So sometimes hard to compare these guys, side by side. So as far as making a tier list, it can be tough, but we kind of grouped them into a few different tiers, and we'll talk about what each one means as we go.
All right. So with that said, let's talk about our first group here, the big three. The top three on the draft. So a little boring, but I mean it's just
true though.
Clear.
That's why they're there.
Yeah, it's just pretty clear that these are the most powerful Mons, at least in our opinion.
I think Dragapult. These are ordered as well, so from top to bottom or side to side, they are ordered. We agree Dragapult is usually in contention, most likely to be banned of all the Mons that we've ever allowed. I guess except for Zamazenta back in the day.
He did get banned. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I feel like Dragapult and Iron Valiant are definitely the flashier of the two Mons, but Great Tusk has a lot of depth for sure, and serves a lot of functions and is great at roll compression, and I think that's what brings that guy up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hits a lot of benchmarks. Very strong ground type. One of the best hazard control Mons in the game. So, I mean, you're just checking a lot of boxes straight off the gate.
Great typing for offense, especially 131 attack. Speed, enough speed, especially when you can get a booster speed if you wanted to. You have like so many options on this guy.
Yeah, and then Iron Valley is just always going to be threatening. Not a lot to be said. Dragapult, one of the few Mons that I feel like is uncounterable. So, I mean...
And I actually feel like it hasn't had a ton of success in any league that's been run by us up to this point. But has it had a first? I don't think it's had a first yet.
I don't believe so.
We can go back to...
yeah,
it has not had a first yet, because it would have the little trophy next to it. So it's not had a first yet. None of these three have. But their power is undeniable. I mean, Dragapult, everyone memes on it, but it really is as good as you make it out to be. It has so many options and so many good things going for it. One of the best speeds in the format that's like a real Pokemon, not like Regieleki.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'd be on the lookout for these in at least the top 5. I would be very surprised if any of these guys were up past.
Yeah, Tusk has fallen once at least. Valiant and Deep Pult have never fell below 2. I can't remember a time where that's fell below 2.
I'm pretty sure they have always just been like top 3 picked.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't last season. Didn't Great Tusk actually go unpicked in Gengar last season? Or in Clefable?
Clefable, yeah. Which is a bit of an anomaly. Do not expect that to happen.
Grab your Tusk. Put the Tusk in the bag, as they say.
I promise you it'll make your team better.
Yeah, it makes starting a team so easy. Between, ground types are hard to come by, spins are hard to come by, so you fighting coverage, which is always good, fighting stab. All right, but we can move on to the next 3. I believe it's 3. Let's talk about our great value tier. It's actually 4 guys here.
Yeah, so with these, it's going to be less power, like raw power, than the first 3. But make no mistake, these guys are absolutely worth building a team around.
you have arguably the second best glue guy in the format on Terapagos. He just is so good at putting rolls together. He's another spinner. You know, Tera Shell is honestly a broken ability. it's so good.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And it's part of what makes him, I think, the best dedicated spinner in the format. If you are really looking for like reliable hazard control, it does not get more reliable than Terapagos, and it just fills a million rolls.
Yep, your Moltres will be safe from rocks if it doesn't have the boots on. As far as the other three, I think that they're all similar as far as their offensive output. They just kind of do it in different ways. Meowscarada being on the physical side. The biggest thing about Meowscarada, and I think the reason we have it on top, is, in my opinion, physical dark types with things like Knockoff and U-Turn with the protein is very, very scary. I mean, Knockoff is almost always a good hit. I mean,
yeah, access to Knockoff just in general makes Meowscarada a much better protein user, much better user of things like Choice Scarf. But make no mistake, Greninja is obviously still great at those roles, and it has that Battle Bond to boot. So it's going to be a very threatening pick, and it's going to be able to sweep more than Meowscarada. But game to game, obviously all three of these have elite speed tiers, which if you're an offensive team, helps your draft out so much.
Yeah, it's pretty much either elite speed, or you got to have a large access on priority. I think it is worth noting, after using Greninja last season, I played against both the Darkrai and the Meowscarada team throughout the season, and those speed tiers do matter. The fact that you're one below Meowscarada and you're a few below Darkrai, and you can never outspeed them without that Battle Bond boost, can make the game very hard, especially Meowscarada.
Yeah, that one speed is actually so relevant, and if you happen to play the Meowscarada guy, and Darkrai is going to be the fastest Mon in like 90% of your weeks,
correct,
which is just insane for a Mon that hits as hard and has moves as spammable as Darkrai. It's a bit more boring than the other three, but just power-wise, it's probably like
Terapagos, Greninja, and Meowscarada are very, very cool. Darkrai is definitely a little more like classic, I guess, but it doesn't have an ability, which is kind of lame. A lot of people don't like that. And it's also pure dark type, but it is definitely powerful. Boring, and it's deceptively bulky. From what I've never used them on, but from what I've heard people who have used it,
base stats.
It's got 70, 90, 90, which doesn't look bulky, but it tanks enough with how fast and how beastly its special attack is. It can take a hit or two in a lot of cases, and that's really important. I can swing a matchup. So I'm good to move on to the next ones if you are.
I am as well. I feel like we subbed up these guys well.
Yep. So these are definitely all great value picks. So you're happy to see any of these. If you get any of these in the late first round, you're really cooking.
Absolutely
here.
Snatch these up.
Yeah,
if you can.
All right. So next we have my favorite my favorite words, 9 to 5 enjoyers. These are the guys who they do their job. They do it well. They don't always reach above and beyond of what they're designed to do, but they definitely, you're never upset about having these guys on your squad.
Yeah, absolutely. They show up. They do what they need to do. A lot of the times with D-Speed, it's something like utility sets. But make no mistake, these guys are also pretty strong offensive threats, even though they might not be as easy to use as some of the guys we've had before them.
Yeah, I feel like these guys all kind of share the common thread of looking like more. I don't want to say utility, but with Goldengo, you have good as gold, so you can kind of draft him almost as like a defog blocker, or a spin blocker, and a defog blocker. You have the tank chomp sets that are like what he's mostly known for these days. Then you have like Deoxys Speed, which, like you said, is generally, I feel like, leans more towards utility, but they all can have very good offensive output, especially things like Goldengo and Garchomp. I mean, Garchomp he got Scale Shot, I think, in the most recent gen, so you got D-Dance sets on him, and then on Goldengo, I mean, you don't know until you've been hit by a Specs Goldengo with Gold is Gold and your tank melts in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. The most powerful breaking threats out there. Again, I would not be upset about first rounding any of these guys.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah,
we're starting to get more into the glue guy territory, where like maybe you want to pair these well with like you might be leaning more into your Dukes, but these guys are definitely still worth building around, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if any of these three got picked in the middle, I mean, none of these three are like top 5 worthy to me. unless you're a huge like Goldango fan or a Garchomp guy. But I do think in the middle parts of the draft, and especially towards the bottom, you can't go wrong with any of the three of these guys. But I do agree with you that they're more, I would say all three of them are more glue pieces than they are their own stars in themselves. For sure. Which is why they do their job. They're the 9 to 5 enjoyers. So let's move on to the next slide here, unless you have anything else you want to bring up. But I'm good.
Just that sums it up for me.
Yeah. Let's move on to our next tier is going to be the crowd goes mild, and that's, to me, that's a perfect explanation of how these two kind of are to me. I'm never excited about having these two guys on my squad. I've used Kieran before. He's not a bad Mon. I know you've talked to me a lot about Gouging Fire. He's not a bad Mon by any means. They're still Monarchs, but I'm not excited about having either of these two guys on my squad unless I'm the Sun guy with Gouging Fire is the only exception.
Make no mistake, this is not us saying that these are bad Mons. Yeah. Absolutely not. What we are saying is that these are by far the least flexible Mons we've seen so far. And they do their job well, which is generally sweeping or breaking with strong ice moves or strong fire moves, right?
Yep.
But sure. Generally, they're just going to be looking to like D-dance sweep or something of that nature, and they do it well. They show up, and that's about that, you know?
Yeah. I do think it's worth noting, if you're an OU player coming in a draft for the first time, Kieran being down this low sounds crazy, but I've used it, and without Tera, it does struggle to break things. It makes it less flexible. Not having coverage on one side or the other with the Tera Blast can be pretty crippling depending on matchup week to week. So I found myself wanting more options on Kieran than I actually had. And as far as everything we've talked about with Gouging Fire, he kind of just comes in, does his little dance, and spams some moves, and then either kills them all or dies. So
yeah, they're definitely powerful. Kieran, without that Tera ground boost on like an Earth Power, it just doesn't quite get there against a lot of steel type matchups. So it's a little restrained by that lack of Tera, but it'll still definitely get it done. Obviously, 130 attack. If you boost that up, it's going to be punching holes, you know?
Yeah. Unless you have a strong fairy type in the back, sometimes you could just get swept by a Kieran with a D dance and what is I forget the name of the thing that it gets, but does it get Scale Shot or does it get?
Yeah, I'd get Scale Shot.
Yeah, Scale Shot. So it's like the loaded dice, Scale Shot, Icicle Spear set, and then sometimes they even run mix because you're coming off 130 base special attack too. So you can run Earth Power, you know, and still hit decently hard on the steel type.
Yeah,
like you said,
a nice option.
Without the ground type Tera, especially if you're mixed and you're not fully investing in a special attack, you just can't get there like you need to.
So these guys, if you're looking to draft a sweeper, you think that archetype would fit well on your team, definitely take a look at these guys. It's not something I would build my team around though.
Yeah, unless you're the Sun guy. The Sun guy, Gouging Fire can exist as your carry on the Sun as the Sun guy. But as far as general drafting, if you're not building a whole game plan around Gouging Fire Sun, they're going to be more accent pieces and more just strong dragons who do their job. And I think with how many good fairy types could be floating around, it can be hard to just have a good dragon type that wants to sweep late game. I mean, that's why they introduced the fairy type in the first place, was to stop that. So. But I'm going to let's move on to the next tier here. So we have our Duke Plus tier. So I'll let you talk about these guys a little bit, but I believe that they're all pretty much, to me, they're all Duke Plus. And that doesn't mean they're bad either. They're just lower than the bar.
These are guys that if I wouldn't feel terrible about drafting these guys, but I would definitely not look to draft them early. These are probably the monsters you're looking to pick up if you're looking for more powerful Dukes early on, and then you come back for a Monarch later. There's some Palafin believers, to be sure. Jet Punch is obviously hitting hard. That
on a 160, is crazy. Yeah,
great setup potential. Urshifus, on the other hand, are really hampered by their speed tier, in my opinion, and without Tera, it can be pretty hard to actually make a sweep happen or get the right breaking power you need. Last season, we saw Urshifu Rapid win Gengar in Rain, which actually did, it does help it get over that break point without the need of Tera. So maybe that's a viable option. And again, if you do need a breaker out of your Monarch slot and you need to come back to these guys later in the draft, these will do you pretty well. But again, would not look to come out of the gate for these guys.
Yes, I think if you get a strong Duke and then even maybe round 2, because by the round 2, most Monarchs are going to be gone anyway. So, you know, you look for like a really strong Tera captain and maybe a third strong Duke. And then in, you know, 4th round, you're like, all right, well, there's 5 guys left. And actually Urshifu single fits the typing fits well. And I have like a fairy resist and I don't have to worry about whatever. Then definitely draft it. But
yeah,
don't look to 3rd pick it, because none of these guys to me are worth a top 5 pick in any world. They're more of the later round guys. But someone has to be that. Some Monarch's going to be that.
Yeah, just number wise, at least one of these guys is, assuming everyone has a Monarch, at least one of these guys is going to be gone. And I do think that there's a world where that scenario you described, that's like the ideal Urshifu draft, where you stay ahead of the curve of what most people are drafting.
Yeah, you're 1 round ahead because you're skipping a Monarch. So you're drafting the first Duke, you're drafting the second Duke, you're drafting the first Tera captain, and then you're drafting another Duke, and then you're like, okay, well, let's throw them on and let's see what we're cooking with. But yeah, definitely, like we've mentioned, I mean, I'm more of a Urshifu Rapid. I mean, I got beat by it in finals last year. I think that Mon's the best of the 3, but you convinced me to put it at the bottom of this tier here. So I'm not a Palafin believer though. Too much of a momentum sink, I think, to switch it out and come back in.
Yeah,
sometimes that itself can be hard to make work.
Especially on the offensive teams that tend to draft it. But I believe that pretty much sums up our thoughts on all the Monarchs.
Yeah, so we could take a look real quick at our whole tier list. So we just threw the whole tier list together. So, you know, if anyone wants to look at it again, this is our tier list broken down. Again, it's hard to compare them all, you know, 1 to 1. It's hard to compare any Mons because they all do different things and they're all different typings, and that's what makes Pokemon so complex as far as battling goes. But as general strength goes, this is a pretty good guideline for those of you who are either new to the league or want some guidance on what we think is good and bad.
Yeah, like you said, a nice general image, not anything to be like taken as the Bible or something. But yep. With that said, we have some more thoughts on some Dukes. Obviously, we can't go over all of them like the Monarchs because there's just way more. That would take way too long.
Yeah, these are going to be more specialized. So you'll see there'll be a category, and then we'll talk about 3 to 4 Mons in those categories that we believe fit whatever that is. And hopefully I can give everyone some guidance on the same day drafting. But let's move on here to the first category we have. So these are 3 offensive Dukes to watch. I'll let you take Hands and Hammerot.
Yeah, so Iron Hands, as far as Dukes go, I believe it's one of the more powerful ones breaking-wise, and it's pretty low pointed compared to, I think, similarly powered ones. So I think Iron Hands is pretty easily worth like an R2 or something.
Yeah.
It just has the coverage to like break so many holes in every matchup. I think it's always going to be dangerous no matter what. You have to respect
this guy was on my squad last season that I was second on, and paired with Greninja actually. And there was one week where I believe it doesn't get dark coverage, and that was like a big thing for a certain matchup. I don't remember, I don't have my teams anymore, but it doesn't get every coverage move in the game, but it's pretty damn close to every coverage move in the game. And coming off of 140 base, you can I've run no investment on this thing besides HP multiple times. You could throw an Assault Vest on because it has Drain Punch for recovery. You could not, and it's still most of the time it's eating one move no matter what. And that's just a great guy to come in and soak a move or two and get some of your momentum back if you start to lose it on an offense matchup.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of matchups that you had last season where it's honestly a really viable strategy to just send this thing out as your lead, your dedicated lead, and then you just start swinging and you effectively take down like almost 2 HP bars worth of Pokemon.
Yeah, how many times have we mocked in the past where you're like, damn, I don't know what to do into Hands here. Like Hands lead comes out, he clicks.
You just have to trade, and it feels bad with him on this bulky to like trade blows with it because usually Iron Hands is coming out on top of that.
I don't know if there's any times I've had Hands where he doesn't get one. He almost always. Sometimes he only gets one. Very rarely he gets less than one. Sometimes he gets more than one, especially with Drain Punch recovery and like I said, the 154 base HP or 154 HP stat is just immense, especially with a 108 defense. He's very tanky with no real investment.
Yeah. Moving on to Samurott. I mean, I don't have to talk long about this guy.
Everybody knows about Hammerot. Yeah,
is one of the most broken moves that
has ever existed.
Made.
Yeah,
and its typing honestly gives it a lot more defensive utility than you would expect. This thing is fantastic. One of the best Mons getting early game pressure and chip. And so if you're looking to get them on to get work done early on in the game, Samurai is absolutely the guy you should be looking for.
Yeah, even if you just look at its stats compared to the other two guys it's around, like...
Yeah, it just looks so much lower. But, like,
yeah,
man, it's a Ceaseless Edge is such a good tool to have.
With sharpness, too, I mean, it does so much damage if you're not resisting it. It's not just... You're not just pressing spikes. You're dealing a considerable amount of damage, getting spikes up. You have pivot on this guy if you want it. You have sharpness.
Stab knockoff.
Yep, you have stab knockoff. Not a great speed stat, but you can... A lot of times you run Focus Ash on it, and you're playing for a layer of 2 spikes, and that's enough.
It's a great Scarfer, too.
Yep.
So... absolutely great flex pick. If you're just unsure of what to draft, I would pick up Samurai.
Yeah, and lastly, we have Bundle. I mean, a lot of people, if you're new to draft, are going to look and see that Bundle's in our league, and it's not even in the highest tier, and you're going to say, whoa, that's crazy, because it's an Ubers guy. In practice, it's been very good. I've actually been somewhat disappointed in the past of how strong I perceived it coming into draft format. But it is definitely a great mon, and it's one of the only mons aside from Kiram that has a realistic like freeze dry. Most mons don't get the access to freeze dry, so you do have to risk hydro pumps to get decent water stab, which is an 80% accurate move, which is not always great. But you have freeze dry, you have ice coverage, you have water coverage. It's very hard to resist this thing. It's blistering fast. It has a weirdly high defense stat too. It's just very weirdly physically tanky for a Delibird clone. But yeah, no, this guy, he's a beast. He's a very, very good mon. I don't want to say the fact that I was disappointed by it, meaning that it's anything less than great. It's definitely great, especially as a Duke. I don't think it wasn't a Duke last season. I'm almost sure it was a Monarch last season. So this is a crazy time. We live in crazy times here. This could be crazy times. Yeah, it could be a meta breaker as a Duke, because you could pair it with a Monarch and things could get scary. So keep an eye out for Iron Bundle.
With that 136 base speed, you're going to be outpacing all the Monarchs that we talked about earlier. With
besides Deepult,
and
Deepult, yeah.
So, like, the Meowscaradas, the Greninjas, the Darkrai's, you're all going to be outspeeding them and threatening them really hard. So, fantastic mon to pick up.
You could run boots on it, and its natural speed is going to be fast. You could utilize the Quark Drive to get a boost on something. There's so many options on Bundle. It's not flexible in the moves department, but it's a flexible item guy. It also gets pivot too, for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I think if you build your teams right, you don't really have to put yourself in scenarios where you're forced to click Hydro Pump if you don't really want to. So
yeah, Hydro Pump should be an accent that you can use sometimes if you really need it. But like you said, if you're building your teams right and you're building your matchups right, very rarely are you having to risk 3 or even 4 Hydro Pumps in a matchup. It should almost never happen, but we can move on here to some defensive Dukes to watch. I know you really want to talk about our boy Torn T and Ting Lu and Dragon. I'll let you have this whole category. You were excited about all 3 of these guys.
You can talk about Torn real quick.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, Torn is another one I feel like a lot of people know. I mean, it's not a secret that Torn T is a great Pokemon. It's the best regenerator mon in the format. It's got surprisingly good typing. Flying base typing, I feel like, has surprised me a lot with how good it's been, especially with access to different items. I mean, Torn can pretty much do anything. To me, it's one. If I had to pick a downside for it, it doesn't have a large variety of very accurate moves. So a lot of times to get considerable damage down, aside from just progress, like I believe it gets knockoff and U-turn. But aside from just getting progress down, to get real damage down, it can be kind of tricky with playing around with accuracies, kind of like what we were talking about with Bundle. But overall, a great mon. It gets Taunt. It's 121 speed, which is a great speed stat for a Duke. You're faster than almost anything. Again, it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a mon that's going to be faster than most of what you're playing against every week. I believe it also even gets Nasty Plot. I don't see a lot of Nasty Plot sets, but it does get Nasty Plot for what it's worth. Is there anything else you wanted to add on Torn T?
No, it's just rare to see a tanky mon. Well, its stats aren't much it's not super impressive on the defensive side, but you are allowed to invest a lot of HP in defensive on this mon, which makes it surprisingly tanky, and you don't see speed like this on most defensive
on a regenerator pivot mon. you don't see 121 speed. Do you agree that flying typing is like weirdly not terrible?
It's yeah, so like with boots, it's like really good.
Yeah, you're not taking chip because you have boots on, as long as you keep away from the knockoffs. And you're weak to some good typings, like some good offensive typings like ice and electric, but you also are immune to ground, so that's a free switch in if that situation arises. And I don't know, flying type has really impressed me. I think it's a very good type, especially with boots introduced.
Moving on to Ting Lu, this guy is one of the best, maybe the best, like pure, like defensive ground type in the format.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
This thing it's so hard to not make progress on this thing. Just like even the traditional Ruination, like Whirlwind Spike set, it's so hard to not get so much work done with this Mon. It's just always going to come in. It takes like 30 on a super effective hit. I don't have to talk long about that. It's also able to like turn into an actual offensive threat with things like the weakness policy set.
Yeah, because you're never one-shotting Ting Lu.
You are never one-shotting Ting Lu, even with the super effective move. And then off that 110 boosted attack, like you're going to be doing so much damage.
Yeah, and what I've seen a lot is, and you touched on it, Ruination is a great move because, like, imagine you have a flying type, you bring it in against Ting Lu, and then you think you're coming in on an Earthquake, and then you're 50% HP down, and if you're not Torn T and regenerating out,
it's like the safest click of all time, provided it hits.
Yeah, provided it hits. But you have Ruination, you have Earthquake, you have Spikes, you have Whirlwind. You have so many like good pieces on Ting Lu, and it just makes such a cohesive and great defensive Pokemon. I do want to honorable mention Glow King, Galarian Slow King. That's another guy who's a Duke. That's a defensive Duke. That's very good. We didn't put him on the slide, but another very good defensive Duke as well. That kind of fits that Ting Lu style, just different typing, and a few different tools.
Last but not least, we have Dragonite, which might be a little surprising to see on a slide about defensive Dukes.
Yeah, you were excited about this.
I really do think with boots, he has incredible resistances, in my opinion. Besides that 4x ice weakness, which you have to watch out for, even like with multi-scale up and with heavy duty boots, this Mon is super tanky, super hard to get rid of. It gets great support moves like Thunder Wave and Encore, and with Roost, it's able to become a really good tank.
Yeah, Roost is like continuously bringing that multi-scale back up. I could see it. Yeah. The only thing is 80 base speed can be abused. It's not the fastest guy out there, especially for, a pseudo legendary. A lot of its stats are kind of put in other places, but 95 defense, 100 special defense, and 91 HP with multi-scale and only one really terrible weakness. I could see it being a great defensive piece if you wanted it to be that.
Yeah, I think it's a really underutilized option, especially in King's Court. With Draft, it's able to, with using these defensive options, it's able to be way more consistent week to week, and also you're able to match up fish for a Dragon Dance set.
Let's not forget that there are weeks where you're gonna bring Dragonite and it's gonna be able to, maybe they don't have a fairy type, and then you're just sitting there and you're like D-dance and spam moves and we win the matchup.
So like you're able to have this consistent defensive piece while also being able to pressure your opponent in the builder with the threat of an offensive Dragonite set, which like obviously we all know it's
Tera shell or whatever that it basically is. I mean, it gives you a get out of jail almost free button. I mean, like you said, there are things that can, if you're getting hit by an ice move that's boosted, you're probably going to die through multi-scale. I think so, at least. I mean, I've never used Dragonite, but I believe you would probably die through that. But in general, most things are not one-shotting Dragonite if it's coming in on full with boots. And if you're investing into defenses even more, because your base 134 attack is great.
Yeah, even without investment, it's good. So be on the lookout for this guy. If it's up in later rounds, if it hits round 3, 4, 5, I think this guy is absolutely worth taking a look at.
Yeah, actually, I think it's interesting. Let's go back. I'll put you on the spot here. What do you think the rounds that you would say are good for these guys to be drafted, just in general? Like you said, hands, you'd say could even be up to 2.
I would draft all of these guys at round 2.
Okay, none of these guys you'd reach for in round 1, you're saying?
Samurott in bundle, I would consider if I was a late pick round 1.
Okay, so so I would say back quarter, like last 3 or 4. I think bundle. I agree with bundle for sure. Hammerot, if you're a Hammerot guy, you're gonna want to draft it no matter what. Hands, I think, is a little bit lower, but I think its points kind of make up for the fact that
its value.
Yeah, and then let's just bring up these guys too. To me, Torn is the strongest of these 3, although Ting Lu gives it a run for its money. Dragonite is more of the value pick, like you said a little bit later in the draft. Tinglu and Torn Teeth to me are more late first round through second, and if it gets to third, you're excited. Yeah.
I would absolutely consider both of these top 2 guys if I was late round 1, and absolutely if it got to me at round 2, I would snatch these guys up.
If it's there in round 3, something terrible has happened.
Something has gone wrong. Yeah. Dragonite, I think a lot of people have traditionally passed on it. So if you want to wait on that, maybe go. Or
to maybe our video will start a trend in both leagues. Maybe. It'll be drafted in round 2 as a defensive piece.
I'd be down.
Who knows?
Yeah, I think if you want to like skip a Duke, go get your Tera captain and come back to Dragonite if it's still up. I think that is definitely a viable strategy.
You might have got me on this. I might have to draft this Dragonite Mon if it's lingering around. I think that sounds exciting. That sounds fun to use. I've never seen it used like that. So that sounds pretty cool. All right, let's move on to the next section we have. These are 3 sleeper Dukes to watch. So when we say sleeper, Mons that are either unappreciated or kind of just, especially the first guy, Landorus, kind of fell to the wayside, I feel like. Like, we, history lesson, we Sheer Force was banned for a little bit, and the Mon was terrible. So then we brought it back, and now it's allowed to use it again, I believe, and now I feel like no one's talking about it anymore.
Still really don't want to talk about it. Yeah, but I feel like, first of all, base 101 speed is not great, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And it obviously with, like, the first thing you think about is Sheer Force Life Orb. Obviously, still very strong, gonna hit hard, but I think this guy is really underrated as a utility mon. It has access to Taunt and U-Turn and Stealth Rocks. It's very reliable at getting hazards up and playing that hazard game. And I think that is a very underrated aspect of that mon to watch.
Yeah, so. and a big thing that we always talk about is like flexibility, right? Like especially from your early picks, you want to take something that you can be comfortable bringing every week. If it's not an offensive, Sheer Force Life Orb looks terrible, you have another option or another option. You could be Taunt, or you could bring Rocks, or you could be mixed and not have to bring a Life Orb and still having. You're still coming off a 125, 115. Like both of the offenses are great. 101 speed is right above the base benchmark to me. I mean, 100 is kind of the benchmark these days for a decent mon. So you're going to be outspeeding those 100s. Defense is good enough. Double immunity. I mean, great mon. I'm surprised that no one talks about it. I think it's I like it way more than the other other Landorus to me.
It's also a ground type, which is hard to come by. At least it's hard to come by good ground types, in my opinion. I know you were excited about Latios, so if you want to talk about that.
Latios, I was most excited about it because as a kid who grew up with these games, I was always a Latios guy. Latios was always known as the better one. But I would actually argue that Latios actually is the better guy right now. I mean,
I would agree.
I've been swept multiple times by these bulky variants that stored power, and then they calm mine and then they store power and then they just go, and you're just better Latios, I think, because to me the Psychic and Dragon type have both kind of fell from grace in the last few generations. So sometimes on Latios, you just don't get it done. You don't have enough punching power anymore on Latios, and Latios is, I believe it gets more utility options, assuredly.
Yeah.
Top of
the big one is Healing Wish, which is absolutely massive for offensive teams. It's such a good tool to have in the back pocket.
So it's giving you like a revamp. It's giving you one option of having a revamp on your offense teams, and it also has great sweeping power as well. Coming off that slightly more defensive profile in his stats. And then Levitate is just a great ability. I mean, you're not weak to ground, so it's not, anything super crazy, but being able to have a free switch in and have a full Latios versus having a 75% Latios with no Levitate is just always great. So yeah, great mon. I don't know if you want to add anything else. I very much think this mon is worth, I think it's the same amount of points as Fat Mike. Iron Hands. It's a lower point mon. 2 points are 1 point lower than Latios, so you're gonna get a value if you're gonna go for an expensive Tera, or if you're gonna go for one of the higher point, one of the top 3 monarchs. Could be worth looking at a Latios as opposed to something else.
If you're one of the first picks and it's a while, you're late in the second round, I think I would absolutely take a look at Latios. They could pair as well, especially with like a great Tusk is a fantastic pairing in my mind.
Honestly, I think either one of the other two are fine to pair with. I mean, I would be happy with a great Tusk and a Latios, or a Valiant and a Latios. I don't really like stacking the 2 dragon types if it was Deepult, but the other 2 for sure. Yeah,
so with that said, let's just move on to the last mon we have here, Weavile. this Mon has gone underappreciated in the last few seasons, but it's really, really threatening coming off that strong Ice Stab, which is always going to be good.
Yeah, very mid-max stats. Very like purposeful design, dual typing that are both physical dark type and ice type. Physical ice type used to be a downside, but now it's good.
Stab knockoff is absolutely massive. And the biggest thing obviously is going to be that speed tier. I'm a firm believer that if you're an offensive team, you should be drafting your elite speed, something 120 and up in the first 3 slots in Monarch or Duke.
Yeah, and people might be saying that's hard, but that's why you need it, because there's not a lot of options. You got to have your one, and Weavile might be is one of the least appreciated 125 pluses in the top tiers. And it does its job, and it's another 9 to 5 enjoyer. It does its job well. It's a great Pokemon for what it does.
Great, yeah. It just comes in, and like if it gets a Swords Dance off, it's so hard to play around.
It's like another thing where you're losing something. I mean, something is dying, and no one on the worst feeling in Pokemon is when you have no outs. When you look at the enemy mon and you're like, I know I have to lose something here. Yeah. And if you're not a hyper offense team and you're not playing to just lose mons and trade, you're like, well, do I lose this defensive piece or do I lose this defensive piece? And then that's kind of how you start that snowball. And like you said, it takes one Swords Dance. That's all this guy needs, because its speed stats are already so good.
A lot of teams are not going to hit that 125 benchmark, so you're going to have the fastest Mon in a lot of weeks.
So, or you're forcing something to Scarf, which is in its own right can be great. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so what would you say for rounds for these 3 Mons if you wanted to throw something out there?
Late round 2, probably to early round 3. I would look at all of these.
Yeah, I would agree. What do you think you would say would be the latest pick of these 3? It's hard to tell. I feel like they're all very close.
Hard to tell. I feel like it's probably Latios. Latios feels more draft specific. A lot of teams might not be able to fit a Latios in there.
Yeah, Weavile definitely, to me, is like pretty much splashable on like every team. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like Weavile, if
you could fit Weavile on
any team
with any Monarch, in my opinion.
Yep. Where Latios definitely is more of a specialized. I mean, again, Dragon Psychic typing is a hard thing to fit on a team. You need to have a plan around it. And Lando is just, I mean, ground flying typing is good on any Mon. So, that's great Mon. All right, so let's move on to our next category here. We have, so now we're going to talk a little bit more on the negative side. So we're going to talk, and our friends down there too, Mr. Latios. But let's talk about some popular fraud Mons to avoid. So in this case, we're talking about Mons that are either perceived to be strong historically, or are just very popular historically as well, that just don't kind of stand up either the test of time or in our specific format.
Yeah, so first off, we have Excadrill, which is a pretty tempting option on paper. You know, it hits hard, it has some pretty good immunities, and it has access to Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin. And so all of those add up to be a pretty good pick. But unfortunately, unlike our friend Iron Treads, who is a very similar Mon, it's really hampered by its base speed. It has a lot of resistances and stuff like immunities, but it also has a lot of weaknesses with this typing to a lot of common types. And with 88 speed, you're going to be threatened and you're going to be OHKO'd by a lot, and it's just really hard to make work. Definitely look at this if you're wanting to draft like a Sand Core. That's definitely viable, but outside of that, I would try to avoid Excadrill.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, 2 things I'll say about what you said. The first thing, Excadrill is just too highly pointed. It's on the bottom of the Duke tier, and it's just it would be more suited, I think, as a tier below if it was 1 point lower. That's a big, because I don't think Excadrill is a bad Mon. There's a lot of things going for it. It can roll compresses, but unfortunately 88 speed with no access to priority, and if you're not using sand, because otherwise its abilities are not, they don't increase its speed except for in sand, it's just not enough. It's hard to get there, and it's hard to stick a spin or stick a spin and then do something else or something to like that. Not to mention it's pretty frail off its double defense. I mean, it has 110 HP, but it's surprisingly easily dealt with for a Mon that seems to have so many options, and a Mon that used to be so popular back in Gen 5 on every team. The other thing I want to bring up too, you said Sand Core. I don't want anyone to get baited into drafting a full Sand team. Sand is better utilized to me as a small Sand Core, sometimes even as small as Excadrill and Tyranitar.
I think, yeah, for sure. If I was to draft Sand, I would just keep it at 2 Mons, Excadrill and a Sandsetter, and I wouldn't touch it with anything else.
Yeah, because there's just not enough pieces in the format, even just in Pokemon in general, of the decks that can build a good sand team the same way you can with, Photosynthesis Sun or the billion rain abusers that there are out there in the format. Just not enough tools to make a full sand team. So I just want to make sure I mention that, because I don't want to bait someone into drafting, someone new to drafting a full sand team with Excadrill, thinking it's going to be the carry. It could be with a small core, but it's not worth fully investing in. Let's talk about Rillaboom now. An 85 speed with priority this time, and a great ability. So I'll let you talk about this guy.
Yeah, so with Rillaboom, I think with a lot of his success in formats like OU and VGC, it can be tempting, but I do think he's slightly overpointed generally. And for a Duke, he doesn't quite give you the flexibility that you want. And his Woodhammer and Grassy Glide are strong. That's like the main points. And obviously, if you want to build around terrain, this is your best option. But I do just think he's slightly overpointed.
Another one I think that would be suited to be 1 point lower, down to the tier below.
Yeah,
in order
I
to
agree.
Could be too strong, but we made bundle Duke, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. If this guy were to be 1 tier below, I just think it's too expensive to make terrain work. Terrain is a gimmicky style in general, especially if you're going for things like Sneasler. I'm not a Sneasler guy personally.
Yeah, I think the archetypes that it often finds itself on, like with Sneasler, Rillaboom is the most common one. I think it's good, but it can be a bit of a trap because oftentimes they're checked by the same things. So it's like you're kind of stacking Mons that like are really hampered by like the specific defensive Mons. So that can be something to look out for. It's just hard to fit a mono grass Mon on a lot of teams. It could be a hard ask.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the crux of the whole point is Rillaboom on terrain, to me, is too predictable and too easily countered. Rillaboom without terrain is not worth a Duke spot, and that's kind of the problem with Rillaboom to me is mono grass. If you're not running a team designed around grassy terrain or terrain in general, it just doesn't feel worth it. It doesn't feel like it's worth the Duke spot. I feel like you'd be better served drafting Ogerpon Wellspring, which is a grass water type, or another grass. I don't know what other grass types are in the tier. I'm not looking at it in front of me, but or actually, honestly, wait for grass. There's a lot of lower tier grass types that can do very similar things.
Grass options later on.
Finally, we'll talk about Latios's partner in crime, Latios. Definitely fell from grace to me. This Mon is crazy. I drafted it in a season and I ended up dropping it because it doesn't do enough. 130 on a dual stab that's not even that good anymore. Psychic and Dragon, 110 speed is surprisingly not enough on this guy too. A lot of times I noticed it's just not fast enough. It doesn't do enough, and it's also a few points more than Latios is. And to me, Latios is the better. I'd take Latios for the same amount of points, I think, than Latios.
I probably would not look to draft Latios over Latios, except, if you have very specific reasoning, sure, go for it. I think the offensive teams that Latios would find itself on is better suited with Healing Wish, Latios. I don't,
because it's providing more offensive pressure, if you want to call it that, more offensive help by having that Healing Wish. And the other thing I'll say too is I forgot what I was gonna say. Does it get stored power, or does it get any? I don't feel like I ever really see it.
It can Calm Mind.
I don't really feel like I ever see it doing a lot of boosting shenanigans. Most of the time, I just feel like it comes in and hits a strong move. It's like tries to be a breaker.
It's just hard to do it with like so many weaknesses.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say too.
You don't have the bulk.
It's hard to build with. It's the same problem as Latios, but it fits worse on the archetype you'd think it would be good on than Latios is, and it's a Dragon Psychic type, which Psychic Dragon type, which is kind of a hard type to build around, and kind of like a hog for your team. You kind of have to build a core around Latios, and I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
As far as would I draft these guys? Because I know we talked about rounds. I personally wouldn't draft Latios. Excadrill, I'd only draft specifically if you're drafting Tyranitar and trying to build a core, or really starved for a spinner or a ground type. And Rillaboom, I probably would not draft either. It's just, unless there's maybe someone will be a genius and build a terrain team that we haven't seen before.
specific terrain synergy, stuff like Hawlucha, stuff like Sneasler.
Yeah.
Sure, go for Rillaboom.
But we have not really seen one succeed.
Yeah.
Continuously, and Rillaboom is I think a little bit overpointed. So let's move on to our next category here. We have 3 Tera captains to be scared of. We have one of my favorite Pokemon, Hydrapple. We have Mew, who's kind of a fan favorite, and then we have Tornadus Therian. So which ones do you want to tackle here?
I'll let you talk about Hydrapple since you love it so much.
Yeah, Hydrapple is just a beast. I mean, it's a Pokemon that probably never should have existed because it already had there was already 3 evolutions, and then there was Applin or whatever, and then Diplin, and then this thing evolved from Diplin. But yeah, it's got Regenerator, which is a great thing. It's got Sticky Hold, which is also actually a usable ability, although most time people go with Regenerator. And it's really good at flipping matchups. It's got some bad weaknesses, including Ice and Poison. But a Steel-type Tera flips that on its head. And then you're getting a Nasty Plot off, and then you're nuking everything in front of you. And then you also have Regenerator to switch out at a later date, and you come back in with more HP. You have Fairy type. You know, if a Dragon type comes in and wants to hit you with a Draco Meteor off that 80 special defense that you can get one-shot by, then you're a Fairy type, and then you're not you still are weak to Poison, but there's a lot of options. And the whole point of Hydrapple Tera is to get that Nasty Plot off or to flip that matchup. And it's I would argue it's one of the best Tera captains that are available. So definitely look out for this guy. It's going to be early picked, I'm sure, especially with the hype that I've seen around it. Is there anything you want to add or any other Tera types? Yeah, I've only ever needed to run Steel and Fairy on it.
Just one of those Mons that, one of its only real weaknesses is that it has so many weaknesses with its base typing. So if you let it just go into whatever typing it wants, it just becomes so much scarier on the spot.
Yeah, 106, 110 defense. It's hard to get through this thing unless you have to have another Mon that has super effective moves and is not worried about. It has to be able to one-shot it, because once you Tera and if you get a Nasty Plot off with the coverage that it has, you're probably dying to almost anything you bring out. So you've got to be careful with that guy. Mon. Yeah.
Next up, we have Mew. I mean, I don't think I have to talk long about this guy. I'm pretty sure most people would realize why this is so good. There's just so many options at your disposal.
Yeah, the option king.
Yeah, the option king. Pretty good base stats all around. And one of the only real weaknesses of it, again, is going to be that mono psychic typing. Doesn't really get it done usually. A lot of bad weaknesses to some of the most spammable types in the game.
Yeah, knockoff, U-turn, psychic is truly
and
a tough type. Yep.
All really bad weaknesses to have, and not much to show for it in return. But suddenly, if you try to knock it off, it just turned into a Fairy type, and it got off a boost. I lose the game.
Yep, it's flipping U-turn, it's flipping knockoff,
yeah.
It's flipping so many bad matchups, and then like you said, a big thing that we are gonna keep saying with these Tera guys is flip the matchup, get a boost, game's over, or you're taking 3 out.
Because you a lot of weeks can find that one set that instantly wins at the game.
Yeah, this one's for the cookers. This one's for the people who are gonna sit in the team builder and they're gonna mock someone and they're gonna say, I'm gonna tweak this stat, I'm gonna tweak this stat, and you're gonna have some crazy Mew spreads that have 4 or 5 different EVs put in to get past this matchup, and have just enough speed with this, and it's gonna be fun to watch. Mew with Tera is something that I'm low-key terrified of, but it will be very fun to watch if the right guy drafts him.
Yeah. Gonna be very rewarding. It's not as obvious as how to use it as something like Hydrapple, but if you do find those ways, it's going to be very deadly. Last but certainly not least, we have Thunderous Therian.
He can have a flying move.
Yes, he can use Tera Blast flying.
Yeah.
Guess what? Coming off a Nasty Plot boosted 145 special attack, that thing is going to kill you. You will not live.
Yeah, its worst aspect is its 101 speed. Sometimes it's not enough to get it done, but it is very happy sacrificing that little bit of speed for a Nasty Plot boosted 145. You thought Hydrapple's Nasty Plot was going to blow you out of the water? Try Flying Electric Stab on a 145 base special attack boosted
this
X2.
Thing gets agility too, so it's not like you're completely out of options.
Yeah, no, you can get that double boost down. If that somehow happens, the game's over. I mean, if you get a double boost down on this thing, you're almost it's hard to lose that game.
It's just one of those Mons where it's close on the damage threshold, so now it's allowed to Tera, and it just kind of gets pushed over the edge by that, not much to say other than that, but this thing just has so much raw power.
Yeah, this is the type of Tera that you just, it's just like, put it in the bag, right? Like, you're like, maybe you're going to Tera flying it like almost every single week, especially with our system where we only get access to 3. You're probably going to Tera flying this every week, but the secret is Tera flying Thunderous Therian is good every week, pretty much. Like, you're definitely happy with it no matter what. So this guy is something I'm really excited for. And it might end up being on the Loke squad. I won't cap. These
are all Tera captains I would draft like round 2. I would draft earlier around these guys.
Yeah, this is the type of thing where if you're when we talked about earlier, if you're gonna drop that Monarch a slot or 2 and you're gonna be ahead of the curve, these are and I'm not saying these are the only. There are other really good Tera captains, stuff like Manaphy. There are other guys out there. But if you want to build your team around a really strong Tera captain, these are definitely 3 that you can build around. All right. Yep. So let's move on to our next. So these are, so we're going to talk about some low value non-Tera Mons. So, and I'll explain a little bit more about the category like I have with the other ones. These are Mons that we felt like you look at in the tier that they're in and you're like, wow, these are really good Mons for this tier. But in practice and what we have seen in our experience is that these Mons don't work out quite as well as you want them to, or as quite as well as you think they will, especially because they're all Tera banned in our league. So, go ahead and you could talk about Iron Fraud or Mr. Boulder over here.
Is a Mon that can really be threatening with Tera, but without it, it just doesn't quite have the punch to get through an entire team. And with that, you're really hurt by this base typing. You have so many weaknesses.
Wow, it's crazy that we keep talking about the psychic typing as being a weakness. That's crazy, man.
It makes you think.
Yeah. Makes a guy
think.
Think.
Almost nothing for this except add a million weaknesses that it doesn't want.
Yeah.
So it can be a nice speed tier, but I would try to get a better Mon for your elite speed if possible.
Yeah. So, and I tried to use this thing once, mocked it with it a little bit, and my biggest issue is you have Quirk Drive, so you want to if you want to boost something, you either boost your speed to get past all of the guys who can scarf you and trade you because you have a billion weaknesses, so you're gonna die to something, or you but then you don't have the attack to get through it. So because with your dual stab, they're not. Rock is a pretty decent stab, but you really want like stab Earthquake or stab Fighting like its base form has Terrakion. With the psychic typing, you just don't have the punch to get through, and then if you're Tera attack, you just get revenged by any Scarfer. And if I'm playing against Iron Boulder, I'm bringing a Scarfer that's faster than it that can one-shot it, because it's got a billion weaknesses.
Just a little bit too underwhelming on the power side. You really need an SD, and it's hard to get off. It just is.
Again, a billion weaknesses, not good enough bulk. I mean, the thing is, you can have infinite bulk, it feels like, and this typing is going to let you down. Like, when you're getting hit double by everything, it's like your bulk is halved. It's basically, I'm not an Iron Boulder guy. We have some people in the league who have wanted to use it, never seen it used well. Yeah. Boulder Nation has not succeeded, I'll be honest.
Boulder Nation, try as they might, has not made this guy work. Yeah. Next up, we have a base Ogrepon. This is the mono grass one. Do you want to talk about this guy real quick? This cool guy?
Yeah. I'll let you take Kamo. Ogrepon looks really good in that tier. You think that Ogrepon, I believe it's next to Hearthflame, it's next to Hearthflame, I believe. You think that this Ogrepon would be great because you can have an item on it, and Hearthflame can have an item. And not saying that the mask is not good, but the flexibility in draft is something that I personally value a lot. So I would think that you look at Ogrepon, you'd be like, wow, I could run anything on it. It's got great stats, and it's an Ogrepon, so it's got to be great, right? But then you think, and again, going back to the Rillaboom thing, it's a base grass type, cheaper base grass type, but it's just grass, so it doesn't get that Ivy Cudge rock type or Ivy Cudge water type or that like big Ivy Cudge secondary stab. It gets the same coverage as Ogrepon, but turns out Ogrepon's coverage to me isn't even as good as you think that it would be without that secondary stab. It gets knockoff, it gets U-turn, it's 110 speed, can take a scarf, it's got a good attack stat, but I think without Tera, because Tera is what makes it truly terrifying, because then you're getting that boost, you're getting that grass Tera with the boost to speed, and then you're really blistering fast with a ton of different options to hit things neutrally at least, although, because I believe it gets ground coverage, it gets fairy coverage, it gets knockoff, it gets U-turn, so it does have some options, but I always felt myself wanting more from Ogrepon in the league that I used it when it did not have access to Tera.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Personally, I think on more offensive teams, you're better off using Hearthflame as a more dedicated lead, just going to be able to punch a lot more holes, or maybe on a team with really strong hazard removal. But, you know, if you need this mid speed tier, 110, it's still going to be able to threaten mostly things with that grass stab.
Yeah.
Again, not the strongest, and that's the main thing that holds it back.
Yeah, because grass is an offensive typing. A lot of times doesn't get you over that hump, but for what it's worth, it is flexible because it could bring a scarf. So unlike Hearthflame, if you have Ogerpon in the back and you're trying to use it as like a Scarf Revenger with U-turn, it can be better in certain situations. If it's coming out and it's able to actually use an item as opposed to the mask that locks it into that damage boost.
Yeah, so I mean, viable, probably not as bad as Iron Boulder at least, but I think it can be a little overvalued, like you said.
Yeah.
Last, but probably not least, we have Komo'o, who unfortunately is just a bit hampered by that fairy weakness, in my opinion.
And the speed tier.
Yeah, and the speed tier is not great, meaning it's going to be hard for you to get that sweep off, even if you do get that boost. I think you would be better off drafting this if you needed it more for like some of the utility. It's a pretty good stealth rocker. It gets things like taunt. So if you're looking to draft it for reasons like that, I think you would be better off. But as a dedicated sweeper, I think it can be a little overrated, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Especially without a Tera access.
Yeah, again, it's the biggest problem with Komo'o is no Tera access, so it can't get out of its pretty, I want to say, like, bad typing. It's kind of hard for it because you're only off an 85 speed, and it has good defenses on the surface, but 75 HP does kind of hinder your defenses. It makes it so it's not as bulky as it looks, and as a pseudo legendary, its stats are kind of almost wasted in some sense, because it's HP and speed are very important stats. I would argue HP is a very, very important stat. So you can't really tank anything. You can't really get the sweep off because you don't have the speed tier to get past. I don't know. It's an awkward mon. It's very, very awkward, especially without Tera.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some sort of usefulness on some sort of utility set on it or something like that, like you were mentioning. But as far as a damage threat as your main sweeper, it's just too weird. It's an awkward guy. Its stats feel weirdly distributed and not in a good way.
I think with these mons, I wouldn't draft them early on, but at the end of the draft, you have some points over. Maybe you skip this tier and you look back at these guys and they fill some kind of holes that you're looking for in your team. Maybe then I would take a look with them.
Ogerpon,
except Boulder.
Yeah, Boulder I would not draft. Ogerpon and Komo'o are draftable in the right situation. I just would not look at them in early drafts and be like, all right, I'm going to build my team around base Ogerpon, or I'm going to build my team around Komo'o. Boulder, if you're new to draft, please stay away from Boulder. It does nothing but hurt you. Let's move on to our next here. So we have, again, on negative topic, let's look at some bad Tera mons to avoid.
Yeah, so Azumarill recently gained Tera access this season, and this is not...
These are all mons that had gotten Tera access this season, except for, did Zora or Kasui have it last season? I know the top three did not.
I believe it might have.
All right, let's just say, I mean, it's our video. None of these had Tera access last season.
Yeah, I don't think any of these did, actually.
Yeah.
Azumarill, this is not saying it's a terrible Tera captain, but for one of the more expensive ones, this is going to be your primary Tera captain, the one you would like to Tera every week. It's really not that great with Tera outside of, it really wants to be clicking water Tera to get that extra power boost. In weeks where that's not very good, I think you're going to be lacking a little bit. Obviously, there's something you can flip some matchup charts and get that belly drum off, but
yeah, I would say that's its scariest set, but I think the reason why it made it onto this list was because of it was 3 extra points. I believe it's 13 base, 16 to Tera.
Yeah,
and
it's
that is a lot
of points.
And that's why you were saying it's your main Tera captain, because for 3 extra points in a draft where you're limited, have to draft 9, you're limited on points, Azumarill kind of has to fit your main Tera captain, and it just didn't feel as good as some of the other options.
I would look at other things to be your primary captain before I looked at Azumarill.
Yeah, so next we have Corviknight, which is kind of the opposite of Azumarill. It's only 1 extra point to Tera, but I just don't think it's worth Terraing. It doesn't really benefit that much from Tera. I mean, again, flipping matchups is going to be the biggest thing on a 1-point Tera. It's your secondary Tera, but Corviknight in draft, to me, already kind of feels like, especially if you're coming from OU, you think Corviknight's this, one of the best mons in the format in OU. It matches up against a lot of things, but in draft, it feels kind of exploitable. It feels like you can get under it and kind of get some damage on it and get through it. And Tera doesn't really stop it from doing that. You're just gonna delay the inevitable to me. Maybe there's some sort of iron defense Tera shenanigans you can pull where you're gonna, but that's very gimmicky, and anyone who's prepping well against you is probably not going to let that happen, especially when they can see what Tera types you have coming into it, so it's not like a surprise fully. I don't know. You were less sold on Corviknight being on this list. I was more the Corviknight guy. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
I do think that there's some merit. Corviknight's best role in draft is when it's like not the primary defogger, in my opinion, and that kind of Teraing it does kind of play into it, but it is just really underwhelming. So you would have to like really want, if you're gonna Tera Corviknight, you really want to have a low tier that's gonna Tera most of the time, because you don't want to be depending on Corviknight.
Yeah, and you only get 2, mind you. You only get 2 Teras in our format. So do you want to use, even if it's only 1 point extra, do you want to use a spot on Corviknight? I mean, I don't know.
Hard to say.
I don't
most
think so.
drafts probably would not.
I'm going to say this next one, you definitely do not want to use a spot on, and I'll let you talk about your boy Rotom Wash. Actually, I'll let you talk about both these last 2 guys.
Yeah, so Rotom Wash, I mean, it doesn't cost much to Tera, but there's no real reason why you would ever want to Tera.
Can you think of one reason why you'd want to Tera Rotom Wash?
I cannot. Again, it comes at an opportunity cost of being your primary Tera captain, so you're not going to be able to Tera any other like high tier, and honestly, for no real benefit. This thing absolutely loves its typing. It would love to stay in electric water.
Its best thing about it is its typing.
It's the best thing about it. It has one weakness to grass, which is like one of the best weaknesses to have.
Yeah, as you've heard, offensive grass is not something that most people want to have.
This thing does not want to shed its typing at all. Like maybe you can get like an offensive hydro pump boost or like make your volt switches stronger, but it's just not worth investing.
Yeah, I guess if you Tera into electric, you're not weak to anything.
Yeah, I mean that's nice. Cute. But
then you're just Electros with extra steps, which is not. Isn't that that's the snake guy, right? Electros, I think. Yeah, that's the snake guy.
I mean, yeah, it's just not worth it.
Maybe that's the best use I can think of. You get out of your grass weakness. You know, Ogerpon base comes in. It's got the band. It's gonna smack you in the face with a Ivy Cudge, and then you're Tera Electric Cinema right there.
Yeah. Speaking of Mons that really love their base typing, that is going to be the theme with our next Mon, Zoroark Hisui. Its really main selling point, and in my opinion, only selling point, is going to be that normal.
Yeah, because Illusion's not real, like in draft.
Illusion's like not real. Again, like you have to be running like boots to really sell it if your opponent is paying attention. And man, it does love all the immunities it gets from normal Ghost. Again, like I said, that is most of the utility that you get from this Mon. And like you can like boost one of your stabs with it. But again, I just think it already has a lot of the coverage it needs. You would be better off looking somewhere else for your primary Tera captain.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the overall like consensus of this whole list of these 4 Mons is that they're Mons that really like their base typing, or their whole Mon is centered around their base typing. Like Zoroark Hisui is a very min-max Mon, kind of like how base Zoroark is, but almost even pushed further. It has no defenses. It dies to paper, like, so it needs to be coming like in on a close combat or on something that it can be immune to. And then Rotom Wash does not want to be going out of its typing. Corviknight generally does not want to be going out of its steel typing. Azumarill, Water Fairy to me is like one of the better typings in the game, even for an offensive mod. So these Mons are, none of these Mons are bad. You could argue Zoroark Hisui is below the curve of what a good Mon is. The top 3, none of them are bad. They're just guys to avoid spending your Tera slot on when it's so limited in our league. A lot of leagues don't have different rules. Our league is very limited in what you can and can't Tera, and then what kinds of Tera you can use, and that's even another layer into it.
Like, it's not like your Zoroark is going to come in and it's going to Tera Fairy on a Dark Pulse and it's suddenly going to eat it up. You're still taking like 70 from it.
Yeah, or it could even just die depending on where it's coming from, what Pokemon it's coming from. Like, you might just die. Like,
yeah, this thing is not tanking hits whatsoever, even with the type
and with 125 special attack, you don't really need to like Tera Ghost to get past. Like, it's just not worth. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. That's the common thing with all 4 of these, like you said.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing with this tier in general is if you're looking at a Mon, think about if it's worth the the Tera slot. And there's more Mons that are like this. We just put 4 on the list. Just try to think of, is it worth the Tera spot? Because really you're going to have, like you mentioned before, a primary and a secondary Tera captain. That's kind of how I believe that it's going to shift this season. So think about, is the Mon worth either having your primary or secondary? If you had to Tera one of these guys, which one are you Terraing?
I would probably look at Azumarill.
I would also agree Azumarill is the best Tera on this list. Just wanted to throw that question out there. That concludes our video for what we have for you guys today. I hope that it helped. If anyone's new to draft and anyone watched the video, I hope it helped a little bit. It could be kind of a daunting task to look at. Most leagues don't do live drafts, so if you're coming into league for the first time, having to pick 4 rounds in one setting back to back can be intimidating. So I hope that we kind of provided a little bit of insight into how our league works, and the quirks and some overall general guidance.
Yeah, this was a longer one, so if you've made it this far, shout out you. You're the GOAT. Thank you very much for watching.
Yep.
And best of luck on draft day.
Yep. Best of luck, everybody. Thanks for watching.